Ernesto, we're honored to have you. We're honored
Thank
to
you.
have all of our dear friends and family back. Happy New Year to all of you out there, and we wish you a most happy, a most healthy, and prosperous 2021. I'm glad you're all joining us yet again. And as always, if you have any questions, any thoughts, please put them underneath the live video over on Facebook, and we'll be checking all the live streams to forward your questions to Ernesto. So first of all, it is a pleasure to have you as our first special guest of the year, Ernesto, and I'm excited. It's going to
You
be a
should be. You should
tremendous.
be very excited.
It's going to be a tremendous time, and thank you for doing us the honors.
Nah, honor's mine. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Let's get right in. Ernesto, when I was doing my little research and digging up old stories and history books, I actually realized that your father's first book was called The Audacious Roses. And I was actually curious whether venturing into premium cigars was your personal first audacious piece of poetry.
That's deep. Yeah, he published that book when he was 14 years old in Cuba. And being in the cigar business is not new to my family. That's actually where he grew up. The history of my brand, I just happened to be related to the guy. He happened to meet a lady, and you know what happens next. And here I am, entertaining America and Europe. And so when I started the brand, I was very interested. I was a bit younger, and I was very interested in the history of cigars. And I realized the history of our brand is very much tied not only to of our company, of our brand, of our family, to cigars with the history of Cuba. And yes, my father was born on his family's tobacco plantation. They came from the Canary Islands of Spain, like many Cubans at that time, looking to the New World over 100 years ago. And they were able to buy land there, and it's still there. It's called El Colmenar. You can visit it. It's a small town called Puerta de Golpe. And that's where Cuba's foremost modern poet, my father, and writer, who lived all over Europe and spoke, I don't know how many freaking languages. The guy was pretty sharp in that regard. Was born. But when they've done interviews with him, he mentions that time growing up on his family's tobacco estate. And there's pictures of him, Time Magazine, New York Times, early New York Times, when he was first detained and arrested by the Castro dictatorship. Yeah, with a cigar. It was very much a part of what I grew up with and know. And during my time growing up, my father had many different friends, well known, some not really as known, and included in that mix were people that I know were tobacco producers back when tobacco was not about hipsters and being cool. Yeah. So I don't know if that answered your question in a roundabout way.
I'm really curious. You were born in Cuba, and you were left when you were 6 years old. Do you still remember some of those old and early days, or some of the feelings that you had back around that time?
You know, I have my first child, my daughter. She's a year and a half old, and it's fun to play with her and to be with her. But I realize that she's probably not going to remember much. But I do remember. I do because it was. Imagine the first time you're ever going to get on an airplane, a Russian-built prop plane, which is fun in itself. You can't forget that one, with a curtain separating you from the pilot. So every time the plane banked, you know, the little thing would these big, and so it was like, not to sound corny or over romantic, but it really was. It's amazing however the human mind works, that you can remember that luscious green of leaving the home where you were born, and looking at the turquoise, bluish green Caribbean, which I would fish 90 miles, if not less, from it in my adulthood there in the Keys and be very close to it. And as Hemingway called them, islands in the stream, because the Gulf Stream borders, shoots in the back of Cuba, borders the Florida coast, and then catches Ireland up there. And that's where all the fish, the migrate, it's like a big road, and the temperature is different, and it's literally a stream within the ocean. And so, the color is everything. Yeah, I remember that. I mean, you got my history. There's a lot of history to my brand and my family, and it's weird to talk about, especially in the United States, where I love America and I was born here and I was raised here. But in today's market, it's less spoken about. Because people, okay, yeah, okay, born Cuban, okay, a Cuban guy, whatever. But this cigar I'm smoking, the Padilla 88th Aniversario, which is named after my father's birthday. It's a continuation of a brand that was very successful when I launched, called the 1932. When the boxes are done, it's going to release in March. There's a picture there with Hemingway, and there's a lot of pictures of my father, Ronald Reagan, politicians, things like that. But this one in particular connects because Hemingway, to us Cubans, is as Cuban can be. And he very much loved Cuba, the culture, the people. Never smoked cigars, unlike what people think. It's not his thing. He felt that it messed up his hunting skills. When you hunt, sometimes put urine on you to distract from the deer. Animals are not stupid. This guy's going around smelling like a cigar. He felt his taste buds are affected. That's what I've read. But you never really see him with a cigar. It wasn't his thing, contrary to what people want to say. But there's an iconic picture I always saw, several of them with my father with Ernest Hemingway back in Cuba, and I wanted to use it there to commemorate this. This is going to be coming out in March, and hopefully hit Europe maybe at that time. And to me, it's the connection between the two countries are very interconnected, because there's a big, huge cigar making history in the United States, in in Key West, which Cubans call Cayo Hueso, Bone Key, which long story of why that is. But the first real manufacturing or premium cigars started to take hold as Cubans came over. It was always an interconnection between the two islands right there, 90 miles apart. And then Tampa took over and all that. So there's a big connection between the United States and that. And there's a romantic kind of thing that's tied in with Cuba, Hemingway, cigars, which I think Europeans still appreciate a lot. And I'm not saying Americans don't. As a matter of fact, I think Americans are trying to rewrite a little bit, not all of them, don't get me wrong, I'm going to start there, but rewrite a little bit of people's history without knowing it too well, and who this person was and what he did to help. I can tell you, people I've met personally that Hemingway helped that were Cuban, and he donated his Nobel Prize to the fishermen that basically he took accounts from to create the book that's won him the Nobel Prize, The Old Man and the Sea. This is a great book about, life. And so there you go.
What's interesting is that quite often, even for me, being based here in Vienna and Austria, Europe, quite often people feel like whenever you throw Churchill or you throw Hemingway or just Cuba into the whole mix, you're already creating that mystique that will give justice to whatever you want to do in either cigars or even rum for that matter, or just create something where it's not actually there. And it's rare to find a family legacy and history that is so closely tied to the whole thing, and it's real, right? And there's no story to be made up, but you just tell some stories from your past.
Yeah, I have good friends of mine who not necessarily come from the cigar business and done very well and did some great things. Jonathan Drew, people like that, who've done some creative things and do something a little bit different than I do. I just, I've been doing people, you sound so negative with all these things, or you make fun of like hipsters, or you make fun of like, and I'm not really, I just have a good time. But at the end of the day, Europe has a lot of history, And America is a new country. I'm sitting here in Texas. It has its history, and it's amazing. It's a beautiful land here on the west. As you can see, my German dog who's going back to Germany. I never get a German Shepherd. No, I'm just kidding. I got two. We over market sometimes things that are already there, that are, to me, sometimes you don't have to go this path. You don't have to be Cuban. You don't have to do all this, have this lineage. It doesn't necessarily, oh, do you touch tobacco and it's more magical because you have this history? No, but I can tell you that we also are forgetting that history, and it's unfortunate. That's all I care about, is to remind people that one of the greatest, he was more than a statesman. I mean, he was a writer, a soldier, yes, he was a politician, even humanitarian. Whatever one we write about him was Winston Churchill. And how we have to go back sometimes to remember, especially during these difficult times, that a place like England stood alone. The United States was not there, if you go back to your history. And this little small, at that time, yeah, it was an empire, had a tremendous navy, but there was only a little channel separating them from the whole Nazi army. And Hitler was putting the pressure. And then before Churchill, there was Chamberlain, which Gary Oldman did a great job in that movie, which I'm forgetting the name. But the Finest Hour blend, which I came out with, was, which is available at cigarworld.de and other retailers in Europe and going out there. But one of the reasons I'm excited about is actually going to be working with someone new in England. And I can't thank The Darkest Hour. Thank you. That's a great movie. You should see it. He did a great job. I love Churchill. I have many biographies on him. Such a great story about him. There's a great bookseller in New York City, Chartwell, which is named after his home in England, which has a tremendous collection, including letters, and I'll talk about that later. But the history of these men who smoke cigars is tremendous. And yeah, you might see people who are unaware and put Che Guevara, who people don't really know their history. I can tell you stories about my father, Che Guevara, and Castro and things like that, pictures of him and all that. But great men smoked cigars. And there's a great history to cigar smoking. You know, JFK, Churchill, Mark Twain. I could go on and on and on. And the country I'm sitting in right now was formed because of tobacco. And where I was raised in Princeton, New Jersey, it was a battlefield there, which was a decisive battle. I mean, we wouldn't be here without that component. So there's all this history in a time when we like to vilify. This, and we also need to also educate people on the difference between a cigarette, a cigar, and the history. And a cigar, you have to take time to enjoy. But on top of that, the history of tobacco, all these things, right? We love rock and roll. I love Metallica. I love all these brands I grew up with. But, there's so much more in our history that we need not forget in the history of cigars.
Was that love and appreciation for that side of tobacco and cigars always with you, or did it slowly and steadily evolve and come with the time that you've spent in the industry? Or would you say that's part of the reason that you got in it in the first place?
Well, I mean, I grew up with my father smoking cigars all over the place, going to Europe, getting crappy Cuban cigars that were plugged. I know you Europeans won't admit it, but and he would just get frustrated, chuck it, or they would bring it to him. And before he died, I was able to enjoy some cigars with him, and he was amazed what the new world, the new cigars had done. I mean, I started my brand in 2003, so he didn't get to see it come to fruition. But I always had it in my mind, and what I've always interested me is the history of the product. I'm not a businessman. I'm a person who enjoys the cigars, their history, and at times, at the end of the day, it's a business. You have to sell the product. But when I've made mistakes or lost focus is when I've forgotten why I got into business in the first place. Follow what your passion is. Follow cigars you want to make, and the rest will follow. And that doesn't mean that I don't make cigars that are cheaper short filler, like the Padilla Fumas are $1.50. And I fought with this big company, and they're like, you know, because it's a big seller. I said, just because it's a lower price point, everyday chug it kind of cigar, it's got my name on it, and I put my name on it, and I want people to enjoy it. I remember there's a story in one of my father's books, his autobiography, La Mala Memoria, the bad memory. I'm translating roughly, where Castro kind of is having second thoughts because a lot of European intellectuals, American intellectuals, politicians, after he was detained and arrested for speaking out what was happening in Cuba, he had like a person that kind of followed him from the security service, intelligence services, that was trying to persuade him, if you will. And my mom was married to him at the time to, you know, look, you can take the path and speak so well about the greatness of the revolution, and we'll kind of leave you alone, and you can have all the finest cigars you'd like. And he was with this handler, if you will, and he was on the outskirts of Havana, beautiful home, and they wanted to talk to him, and we're letting him stay there. And he tells a story where his driver at the time, and the guy next to, you know, the handler, the intelligence service guy is trying to coerce him to change his ways, lights up a cigar, and he tells the driver, "My God, man, that's a horrible aroma on that cigar. I'm sorry, I don't mean to insult you." He goes, "Well, Mr. Padilla, I don't get to smoke the cigars that you've got to smoke here." So it kind of hit him. It kind of hit him because my father was a very simple man, very humble guy, opposite of me. and so that was like an epiphany, if you will, that he realized, that wasn't how it was where he was raised. This is not the direction he was going. He traveled to Moscow, lived in Moscow, had many friends who were getting arrested, Evgeny Stushenko, other writers, artists who were seeing what was coming. He was a very liberal, open-minded man. And that's what made it challenging for creatives and artists at that time that had this utopian, I don't know if it's the right word, ideal of what communism was going to bring. And he wasn't so much against, people helping people with the government kind of setting, but we know what happens and what happened there, what Stalin did and these things. And so he realized and kind of went back to his home country and sounded the alarm, had the opportunity, had the voice to sound the alarm. And for that, he paid a price. And so that's the price, the integrity that you pay. And he had other friends that chose a different path. And I never understood why he still maintained that friendship. It was interesting to see. But throughout my father's life, I don't know, I think maybe since he started, cigars have always been a part of it. And my family's history is cigars. So
what an inspiring background and what a highly interesting story. But Ernesto, tell us a little bit about how all of that culminated in the creation of your own brand then. It was the time after the boom. The word boutique was probably not thrown around as much as it is these days. What was that feeling like? What was that final realization moment when you said, now's the right time, I got to kick this off, I'm going to start my own cigar brand?
Yeah, I was in maybe my late 20s. I'm 48 now, just turned 48. And you're right, there weren't that many, if any, boutique brands. It was like everyone thought that after the cigar boom started in like 93 with kind of, I would say, almost the launch of Cigar Aficionado magazine here in America. And then the bubble kind of popped in 97, but the effects weren't really felt until 1998, 99, and 2000. It was just downhill. And quickly, I'll tell you the story. I was working in advertising world. I came from a creative background, obviously, because of my parents, but I wanted to do something where I could use my creativity and create a product. And cigars were just a natural thing. I messed around. I tried some. My father, when I was younger, and happened to know a lot of these producers are very large that most people wouldn't even know at the time. And a gentleman, introduced me to one manufacturer. But before I did that, I happened to run into Nick Perdomo Cigars. And he was a guy that didn't really have a background so much in the cigar thing. He was an air traffic controller and started this brand out of his garage or something, and with his partner, Mike Argeni from New Jersey. It's prototypical Italian-American guy, great guy, still friends with him, who was VP at the time. And it was my father's funeral in 2000. He was a visiting professor of Auburn University, and he was transported to Miami. And I happened to, long story short, just run into Nick Perdomo, who invited me over to visit his offices. I did. I was working for an advertising agency, actually in Dallas. And I said, if you ever need any help, let me know, and I'll see. He called me up a couple months later, said, could you come down to Miami? And I said, sure, why? Well, I got this position, which was not like, it was a cross between graphic design and marketing. It was just, they needed someone to help with a lot of the stuff. I think I cost Nick a lot of money because I smoked a lot of cigars at the time. I was there for about a year. My purpose was to learn the business. People don't do that today. People just want to get in the business and just go. And I happened to, he sensed in me that I had a passion for cigars. He really did. Forever he is. The guy's a hustler. And I don't mean that in a bad way. He was, he hardworking, wanted to get his business going, and had some success, but they had seen rough times also. And now we're having some success. This was 2002, but the boom was over. And they had started a factory in Nicaragua not that long ago. He asked me if I could go travel with him and be his cigar roller. I go, Nick, I don't freaking, excuse my French. That's Macron. I said, I don't roll cigars. I just smoke them. He goes, well, why don't you learn to roll them? And they had a Cuban guy down there in Miami. And sure enough, I learned to roll cigars. And then I hit the road with Nick, or hit the airplane with him. And we flew to visit iconic people who are no longer with us, like Diana Silvas, who had a great shop in Chicago. Great lady, like very iconic. And traveled to some key places. And at that time, I had it in my back of my mind. I'd really like to start a cigar brand. How the hell do I do this? My brother's older. And excuse me, you hear that? That's the sound of freedom. Fighter jets. F-35s going to Europe. $135 million a piece. Putin is shaking. Hold on, let's wait till the literally, I'm not kidding. They are F-35s. They're built here in Texas. So we have a big base, and I'm not too far. It's pretty cool to see F-16s and F-35s fly fast and low, and they are loud sometimes, like my German Shepherd. But back to cigars. I was in a position where I just wanted to start the brand. I went to my brother who's older. My family had been in other industries as business people, and kind of convinced them to partner up, just kind of like a silent partner almost. He smoked cigars. He said, okay, do it. I had no clue what I was doing. Still don't. Who cares? Just go. And I decided to launch the brand back in 2003. And while I was there, I met a guy called Frank the Russian. He talked like this, but he wasn't Russian. He was Cuban. But we Cubans, we stereotype, just like humans everywhere. So if you're blonde with blue eyes, even though you're Cuban and very light skinned, we call them El Ruso, whatever. If you're Asian, everybody's Chinese. It's just how it is. So Frank El Ruso, he said, there's this guy down in 8th Street, has this little factory called Pepin Garcia. You should go see him. I think he's making the cigars that you're going to like. I go, okay, I'll go down there. I walk into this very old storefront in Little Havana, can barely move. And I meet this gentleman, his son, his daughter was there, and maybe there was like 7 cigar rollers, all Cuban. And I had learned enough about cigars, working with Perdomo and things like that, about the industry, to know that that's beautiful, that's great, but where's the tobacco coming from? How can it be consistent? What is it? I lit up the cigar, And I said, holy shit, this is amazing. This is the kind of cigars. Absolutely. He was right. These are the cigars, the style, the Cuban style that I want to make. You have to backtrack and you have to understand when the cigar boom was happening, people were like, I guess we didn't have hipsters, we had posers, and yeah, some people were interested. There was a few brands, Fuente and stuff like that, that had been at it for a while and had some great tobacco inventories. But for the most part, uh, you needed, and it doesn't get enough love, you needed access to great tobacco. And that's where I found out who his partner was that was helping him. And it was a gentleman called Eduardo Fernandez. And Eduardo actually was born in Cuba. He's a bit older than me. And he left when he was 12 years old, what was called the Peter Pan flights. This is when Cuban families, when Castro took over, sent their children over to Miami, thinking that they would be reunited in 6 months, a year, that would all topple. That didn't happen. Eduardo became a very astute businessman, went to the Wharton School of Business, like our friend Donald J. And him and his brother started a company in Spain called Telepizza. They didn't have pizza delivery service and it spread out. I don't know. You guys would know Telepizza more than I would down there. But he went back to Nicaragua in the mid to late 90s and started investing in land and things like that. And he met these Cubans and he was able to get kind of that operation going. So when I went there and I walked into Pepin Garcia's place, I was, you knew. I mean, if you love cars, it's like meeting, walking in and seeing Enzo Ferrari or Ferdinand Porsche. They were making boutique car. As a matter of fact, Porsche started right there in Austria. And a lot of people don't know that. And so he was making cigars in a style that wasn't being done at the time. The cigars back during the boom were primarily Dominican with Connecticut wrapper, mild. Some were horrible. We probably lost a bunch of possible future consumers because the cigars were so terrible back then. It was just crazy time. And so Nicaragua is not really thought of at the time too much. It was Padron. That was stuff my father would smoke. They started with cheaper cigars, what we call cafeteria cigars, to meet the market for the exile community in Miami. And they're still there. They still make these Padrones that a lot of people don't know. Now all these Europeans are going to go into Cuban cafeterias going, what are those Padron Fumas? And good for them that they still make those because they probably don't need to. The average Cuban would just pick those up, or the regular 1,000 series from Padron, like my father did. And that was what you did. You went down to that ugly yellow building that said Padron on the side, and you got your cigars through the little window, and you got on with it. And now they have a very nice building, and then all right. But I was impressed with what they were doing, the style of what they were doing, the tobacco, everything. And I said, let's go. Let's do it. And there was a couple of little other people. I think Pete Johnson just had started there. This guy from LA with tattoos. I think he kind of set the tone for a new kind of thing. The only thing I would say out of respect for Pete, unlike these other people, is that he was very much into Cuban cigars. I know he's very much into wine and things like that. But, I was like, who the hell is this mofo? With all these tattoos and weird and so we almost started the same kind of way. I didn't really get the packaging because to me, it was like, looked to me, and I understand what he was doing. It was Cuban inspired. And I was like, to me, it looked like kind of knocking it off, but it made sense, and it makes sense for him. And I've taken different approaches and done my thing too. We started there. I worked with him till about 2008. I worked there, and I also started working with the Oliva family before they came the Oliva family also at that time because I wanted a cheaper cigar because the production was so small. I didn't know anything about forecasting what cigars are doing. I couldn't make enough cigars, and retailers get mad at you. Yeah. And these were expensive cigars even for back then. So at that time we started taking off. At that time, everybody then when it hit, and we were started getting all the ratings and all the stuff. Everybody wanted to make cigars there, and they went into Nicaragua. I stayed with what is now called Aganorsa, Eduardo Fernandez, and made cigars there and took a different path. Which is fine. Now he's known, he's done his thing. And then from there, I'm always interested in people and what they're doing and what they're bringing to the game. What I do, unlike all these people that I make fun of, I call them the self-appointed cigar blenders, cigar masters, is I'm more of like a movie director or producer, if you will. I put the team together. It's not just one person that sits there, even in all factories, and it's like, oh, it just come to me, the master blending. It doesn't work that way. I ain't trying to ruin anybody's marketing hype or whatever, but I'm more of like curious about, okay, who's this Abdel Fernandez that someone sent me samples of? He was all happy like that, and I was like, who the hell is this guy? We're talking, like 15 years ago almost, and he had this partner back then.
AJ became popular, right?
What's that?
Way before AJ became well known and
yeah,
popular.
I can't believe it. Now it's like, I don't know. I mean, it's I could retire if he gave me one of his tennis shoes. I mean, he's done very well. He's done an amazing job. But at the time, it was interesting because when 2008, if you can recall, it was the Great Recession. So it was we didn't know what was going to happen. I was working with Oliva doing stuff and this and that. Also it came out with a line called the Padilla Habano back then. And at the time, the internet and cigars started really coming to fruition in America. A company called Cigars International, now owned by Scandinavian Tobacco Group, came to fruition. And there was the American brick and mortar retailer kind of having this internal battle. For me, it was about survival. It was like, I remember the bank calling me at that time saying, "Wait, you're getting a wire for $500,000. I'm like, these people never called me before. And I was like, "Hi, we're losing 40 small businesses a week. What the hell are you doing?" So I guess they must have thought I was up to something. I go, "Well, it's coming from a legit company. You can see," but I basically had to do things to survive. And that kind of pushed me into that realm of online at a time when it wasn't really as well established. And now I've curtailed that. It's there's very few places actually, and we started our own e-commerce site. Also, the world's changed, and you have to adapt to it. Sometimes you're not ready for it, and you have to go with the stream, flow like water, like Bruce Lee said. So at that time, we started doing more and more business, and I was introduced to this gentleman called Abdel Fernandez and his partner at the time. And the cigars were great. And we were selling them Cigars International with my brand. He was making some others. And the consumer knew, he could tell. They're like, wow, these are amazing cigars, especially for the money back then. It was tremendous. And what people don't know about Abdel back then is it's not like he did not have money. He did not have much. He was living in a crappy little place. The Oliva family helped him, and different people helped him. Placencia related, all these people. And, these are the stories that now I look back, I'm like, wow, am I that old that I remember all that? And we started making cigars, and he would take tobacco and pay, if a pilon, which I don't know, I'm sure your viewers hopefully are familiar with that process. And if it's not 100% cured or ready fermented, you might take it at the stage, finish it off. He took like the extra effort to make Ferraris for the price of Fords at that time for Cigars International for us, because we just needed to feed ourselves. But he did something that a lot of other people, I see some in the Dominican Republic, it was just like rolled up newspaper almost. He really took the time, even though he didn't have the resources at the time, to properly ferment, process, and work tobacco. And it shows today that people caught on. And so it's come full circle. Done many cigars for him in the past. If you hear the lovely baby screaming there. We've come full circle. And now I came back to him and said, you got all this notoriety and make all these cigars, and you don't want to do something for me. No, what do you talk about, Padilla? No. And I said, all right, let's do something. And he goes, but I want you to do something, man. I mean, I really want, you know, and I know it sounds like, oh, okay, sure, whatever, but I really want something different. I really want, you know, the cream of the crop. I don't care about the price in this particular thing. And I want to redo some of my line, like the finest hour. And I want to, let's go up a notch. Let's restart it. Let's get going. And so we have, and you know, these cigars just landed. We're in the middle of pandemic, and a year ago we're getting ready to launch, and this happened. And these have been sitting for a year, and now they're going to be coming out. And we have another line, Padilla Poetica, coming, beautiful band that was going to be printed in Holland. But all this going on, the logistics of everything, I put that one on hold. That'll be released later on. But I've gotten the opportunity to work with people before they were what they are now. Aganorsa back then. Raíces Cubanas, some people might know it from the #1 cigar of the year, the Prensado, Hugo down there, who grows a lot of his own tobacco. And please, just because something is made in Honduras, even though my cigars are both, I've worked in all the countries and primarily Nicaraguan, give that a shot, because I think you're missing out on a lot of great stuff. There's, like, for example, the Aladino brand, great brand that's come out from Christian and Rose brother. That's a brand that I've enjoyed, very classic cigar, rich in flavor. So,
now, Ernesto, when you speak about those early 2000s after the boom, would you say that it was probably a bit easier to get a connection to those guys because they weren't probably as well known, or because there were less people in the industry then because everybody went bust? Or what was that situation like in those days?
Yeah, there was, you know, starting a cigar brand back early 2000s was like, what are you doing?
Crazy.
Or, you know, it's like the vanity thing is gone. You know, you can see Cigar Aficionado went from this thick to like this, you know, and then it was a great time, actually, because it was the birth of Nicaragua, and companies like Drew Estate, also down there, a friend of mine, John, you know, crazy ass gringo friend of mine, decided to go down there and live down there. And I know most people know him from the acid, the flavored stuff, but then later on you see what he's done with Liga Privada and other things. I mean, that guy is the real deal, even with all his madness, you know, much the tip of the hat, because, you know, at that time it was, I mean, his stories of grinding it out are really tremendous. I mean, third world country, sleeping on a floor in a factory, you know, doing things that I didn't even have to do. I mean, is impressive. There's a sound of freedom again. Damn right. Let's see. As long as they don't drop anything. Let's see. So it was an interesting time. It was a cleaner market. You know, Alec Bradley was kind of just struggling along. And someone said, "You look cold." Yeah, from Miami. I mean, Texas. Actually, it's not bad. It's probably like 60 something here or something. But it was a great time to start. It was an interesting time. People who did start really had a passion for what they were doing. Word is overused. Even people like Pete Johnson or whatever. I think he was just as stupid as I was, in the sense that he was like just working at this place, the Grand Havana Room, as a clerk, and he was like, "I love cigars. I want to do it." Okay, and he did, and we both didn't think about any kind of traditional business plan, if you will. We're not the type of people you really want to, you know, have at the Jeff Bezos corporate meeting. You know, like, "Jeff, that pasta is great. Let's do it." He's like, "Well, yeah, we're never making anyone. Who cares? It's awesome." It was interesting. And also at that time in the early 2000s, around 2004, 5, 6, there was like almost a second boom coming. And in Russia, I remember all of a sudden, I don't know what happened, but they really were like had a demand, and we started selling in Europe, and it seemed like cigars were kind of coming back. Maybe the economy was coming back, things were coming back, and things like that. But in 2008 and 9, you know, the world changed. There was a Great Recession, and cigars were still sold, but now people were more conscious of how much these cigars were, and so we had to adjust, transition, and survive. But I think it was a great time. But you just didn't see the amount of silliness. I don't know if you get it in Europe, but some of the some of the crap that you hear here is just like, oh my God. Maybe because I've been doing it so long now, I feel, and it's nothing compared to others. But and there were some great people that passed away. Arsenio Ramos, great Cuban agronomist blender, I got to work with over there at Aganorsa, learned a lot from. Old man Padron. You got these guys have left the industry, and now you've got these guys that are self-appointed, whatever. They fly down to Nicaragua once a month. They're like, oh, I'm blending it. The director of almost a film. I work with a tremendous amount of people to get a project done. And one aspect is where are we at with this tobacco? Where's it at? Where are we doing? Where are we at with the printing on this in Europe, or depending where we're doing it, and what's the box can be like? What's it? All these kind of things, and what's going to be the price point, and all this, and how you develop a brand, and why you develop a brand, and all these kinds of things. But and it was a time there. We've gotten like, I don't know how many top 25 cigars of the year, Cigar Aficionado 92, 93, and that's great. I think now there's a lot more people are more aware who are smoking cigars and can make their own decision, and I hopefully so, and experiment and try different things and use the ratings as a guide, but not the be all end all at all. So
when you're directing, what qualities are you looking for in the actors? You work with so many great factories with so many industry icons, but what is it specifically that you're looking for before you're venturing into a new partnership, or when you team up with somebody to create a new cigar?
Someone that is on what we call the same wavelength, that understands what I'm trying to achieve and produce. First off, like, there's a new small factory. A friend of mine, I told him, you're crazy, don't do it, European. And, because it's the same that my friend Jonathan, anybody would say, and not trying to discourage anybody, but it's hard, it's tough, and it's not what people think. But I try to look at, from a pragmatic background, the access to what tobaccos they will be having long term. Where are they getting it? What kind of supply? Are they growing any of it? Those are like the basics. And I don't, because it's a small factory, doesn't mean I won't work with them because they won't have access to all these things. On the contrary, if there's somebody behind it, they're going to work it harder, select even more specific bales and things like that. And then they're going to specialize in maybe more Habano, more certain things. And so I have a small factory that I'm going to start working with, doing some projects, some short filler stuff, which is fantastic. More everyday type cigars. And then we start. I led that factory first. I smoked their cigars, not like make this for me like this and that. I want to see what they've done, what they're doing, and what their style is. And then I kind of come in and I kind of, from all this time, direct, if you will, and say, look, instead of bumping it up with this Ligero, let's try a Viso from Esteli, let's try, Jalapa, and all these regions. As you make cigars, just like chefs, they can probably recite, a recipe. If you add this, which might be counterintuitive, could work. The other day, it was a cooking show, and it was in Italy, and it was something like a cracker with tuna, and then I swear to you, it must have been like chocolate, and they gave it to a person, and you didn't think that would work, and it's like, whoa. So when you play around with tobacco, some things that you think, oh, this is the strongest leaf, let's use more of that to raise the body on a cigar, you learn through time that's not necessarily the case. Little things. Are you there?
Yeah.
And so, but that you vibe with the person, that the person is really focused on the same goals, and that they have the capacity to achieve those things. Most people wouldn't have looked at a Pepin Garcia because they would have said, well, it's a tiny little factory. How is this ever going to go? The know-how, the expertise of the person behind it, how they operate, and what their potential is, and do they know tobacco? properly. There's a lot of people here that really don't know a lot. You'd be surprised. And some of the things they do, you're just like, okay, no, that's some of the things. Consistency is number one in cigar making. It's not making a cigar great once. It's consistently making great cigars. That's a very challenging thing.
And that's also very much about playing with your inventory and adjusting, because whenever you think about a blend, and it's nice to read on the magazine that this cigar might have X wrapper, Y binder, and then the filler, but maybe next year the crop's going to be different, and you need to tweak it slightly and adjust the blend in order to keep the very same aromatic profile.
This cigar here, the Padilla Miami, which I don't sell in Europe because it's very expensive, it's still made in Miami. I put its original band back on it, and it's been in the top 25 cigars. It's fantastic. Very small factory called Titan de Bronce on 8th Street and 11th Avenue. It's actually across from where I started. And I wanted to keep that because Sandra, who runs it, great Cuban lady, she's done a tremendous job. I mean, at first she inherited from her parents, and they were just kind of rolling cigars to the tourists and whatever. And I'll tell you a long story about that, but finally she made the connections to get the right access to the right tobacco, and all the people there are Cuban, and how we do things and how it's produced, and from the filler to the wrapper, all done by one thing. And it's an amazing cigar. It's an expensive cigar. It's not for everyone. I make cigars that are $1.50. I make cigars way more. It's still the values of the brand and what I'm trying to achieve. And so I make cigars with a very large operation like AJ, and then I make a cigar like the Padilla Miami, a smaller operation. I'll work with a smaller factory to do something else. So I like to keep it interesting and work with people who have the same passion that I do.
Is it challenging for you to juggle all these different partners? Because even the workflow, I would imagine, is totally different if you work with AJ or with a smaller factory where it's probably an operation with a handful of ladies and gents there.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's with Raíces Cubanas, we do tremendous amount of cigars. For example, a factory more people might have known. I use a lot of Norcia Tobacco, their own tobacco. That's a different machine. We do, I don't know, like 800,000 short filler cigars there, and the Pumas or something. And then we'll do 200 boxes of Padilla Miami a quarter, 10 count boxes, very small. And the production's kind of like set up that way in America. And with a few retailers we have, they literally, I try to space it out because it's amazing to see them, those boxes just fly, even though, the price is definitely up there. It has each factory has its own rhythm and feel and things. And then you've got the box factories, which is another headache in itself, and dealing with that. And everything has to come together. The printing of the bands, the boxes, the tobacco, how much it's it's an amazing orchestra, tremendous amount of people involved in that, and I'm always on the phone. Where are we at with this? Where is this at this? That's kind of what I'm doing a lot of times, and ensuring it, and then keeping cigars to the side, seeing how that last batch was compared to this, what's going on, what happened. But I try to work with factories that can keep consistency from small to big and give them projects that match their output.
We had a question from Ian. Ian, Happy New Year to you as well. Thanks for joining again.
Hello, Ian.
Happy New Year, and thanks, Ernesto. I'm really enjoying this talk. And I was interested to talk about Cuban cigars and the Cuban style. I mean, I was given a Cohiba, which I smoked at the weekend, and I looked it up, and it would have been about $60 or $70 just for one stick, which is crazy. And it was an okay. I mean, it didn't thrill me, and I've had cigars that I've enjoyed more than that. And I think that the New World and Nicaragua, I just think they're doing such great tobacco now that, are you trying to get a Cuban style, or are you taking advantage of the New World style of cigar and the tobacco you get there? Because I think there's better tobacco now coming out of other parts of the world.
Your accent sounds like you're in the Ukraine.
I'm not.
I would. Oh, no, I'm just kidding. Well, it sounds like you're in the United Kingdom, right? What's that?
When I was
I'm
in
sorry.
Monaco, the menu in Russian when I went to dinner, but
Oh, Monaco. Well, excuse me. You look like an F1 racing driver or a footballer, as you call it. Uh, well, no, I agree, and that's why I'm excited about Europe. We actually, and I'm working to get more distribution in there because I have a lot of retailers in Europe inquiring about the brand because people have traveled, they've tried it, it's been out in the market sometimes, and exactly those reasons. Um, they they a lot of you over there in Europe, you've got access to the Cubans, and you realize, the stuff that's coming out there is rushed. It's Cuban tobacco is the best in the world, bar none. Why? Because the soil is very unique for that plant. It's very, very unique. You can grow tobacco anywhere. You can grow tobacco in, Westminster. It's a weed. It's very easy. But the combination of the soil, the temperature, the sun, all these things combined, and Cuba is in a very hard financial position. The system of government, it doesn't allow what works. And so they've got very limited resources, and they have to rush uh, their products, in my opinion, and what I've smoked, been gifted. But even still, Cuban tobacco is so amazing that the notes that you get on it are still very unique. But, the quality, you can see it's rushed. The rollers get paid nothing. It's a horrible system. And one day, hopefully, it might be the only place where I will probably team up and open up my own factory. Hopefully one day would be Cuba, because that is, to me, still the cradle. Nicaragua is fantastic. It's great, and we're doing great cigars there and the whole thing. But there is something, I remember talking to Arsenio Ramos, who's an agronomist from Cuba who passed away, who lived there. He spoke about Jalapa in Nicaragua being the closest to Pinar del Rio, the wrapper growing region of Cuba, and the soil being reddish and things like that. He says it's almost there, almost, but not quite. And that's why Burgundy, Bordeaux, and all these regions have their accent. And by the way, as seed strains spend more time in certain conditions, if I spent, which I should, a few years with you in Monaco, I would probably have a Ferrari and speak like you. It would just happen over time. So, but no, seriously, the seed strains, you got to keep them kind of fresh and kind of, there's some things that happen with them. How many generations removed? Like Indonesian was originally Cuban seed strain brought over there, but now that same thing grown in Ecuador, Sumatra, is amazing. Has nothing to do with Indonesia, which tastes like, newspaper. It's an amazing seed strain that went around the world and, came back to that part of the world. But yeah, I don't understand why you guys over there, in Spain in particular, which is where my family's from, they're very like zealots about Cuban and then everything else. In Germany, engineering, I have two cars. I have this German dog I'm looking at, which is somewhat well designed. I think when you open a box and, half the box is plugged or things like that, that's, or you're seeing green spots, not properly cured tobacco, that's insane. It doesn't, and for what it costs, we're coming to England. We are in Germany, and my plans are to spend more time. My wife is from Europe. She's from Finland, and so I guess I have a half European daughter. But besides that, I've always enjoyed talking to cigar smokers in Europe because you are trying Cuban cigars. You love the history of the brands and the tobacco and learning more about it. Not the same in the U.S. we don't, but there's definitely a tremendous interest. And I asked my friend, a gentleman I met not too long ago, a younger guy who loves cigars, there can be somewhat of a stuffiness in England to cigars. And he started watching my videos as we became friends. And he said, here smoking a cigar is an event. We really have to take the time, find a place to smoke it, really, and it's not a cheap hobby. And it's a different experience there. So I guess you guys really have to aim well and steer away from, maybe here we have so many options and so much hoopla. There you really focus in and have to get to the crux of something.
Yeah, but I think things are actually changing over here, and I've been banging the drum for Nicaragua for the last 4 years, and in that time, a lot more people in England now are discovering them and enjoying them, and I mean, Randall McDonald at Boysdale now stocks a lot of them and has been to Nicaragua. Sota Cigars, Lawrence Davis, who was always just smoking Cubans, now he's been converted to Nicaraguan and he's starting to sell them. And I think a lot of people are finding that, as you say, the Cubans who get a box and, you know, if 3 out of 10 is the limit of the ones that are bad, then you're doing okay. Yeah. And I think it's so expensive is because the retailers have to take so many back. I've had Nicaraguan cigars and I've rarely had one that's not been a great cigar, well made and smoked beautifully. I've had Cubans that have just been a disappointment, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I mean, well, good for you that you kept an open mind and tried non-Cubans. I mean, I've had some great Cubans. I've had a lot of terrible ones. And it's not just the construction, but you can tell that tobacco is being rushed, that it's not being properly worked. It takes a long time from when you grow tobacco to the curing barns, to the fermentation, to the whole process is involved, years. And it's a shame to see the country I was born in that has such a history with tobacco going about that way. I think eventually those things, that government will change. It will take a long time, maybe, but you will see a new era of Cuban cigars. But now I love to compete against them. I love to give, you know, we can't charge the same, nor do we want to charge the same as Cuban cigars. We've got, you know, some great cigars. I mean, the finest hour, I think, is like €7 or €8, you know, in Germany. I think that's an amazing cigar. It comes in, you know, 3 blends, a great Habano wrapper. I know in Europe, you tend to smoke less Connecticut wrapper. That's an interesting thing. Where here in America, that's a big part of the market that people don't realize. So it's a more seasoned smoker that's more used to a little bit more of a fuller, not fuller, but more of that Habano profile, if you will. So, yeah.
Ernesto, when you speak about those differences in the market between the United States and Europe, would you work them differently or much rather keep you do you and it's always the same style, the same way of doing business, the very same cigars, and the market's got to decide whether they like it or not?
I am very much me. I don't know how to be anything else. Hello, how are you, my lady? You know, I'm not gonna be like, you know, you know, and all that. You know, I like German beer, I have German cars, I have a German dog, and all that's great. I love Winston Churchill. But no, I'm me. I for the American market, people have enjoyed me doing these live things and being silly and wearing a fur coat in the Rockies. And all that, you know, the American market, I think, enjoys a little bit of the hoopla and the celebrity part of it, if you will. I'm a small company, and that's kind of like, yeah, it's a catch-22, if you will, because I don't necessarily enjoy being the face of it, but and sometimes I'm a little bit too straightforward, if you will. But the Europeans are, I don't know, they're very they're great to talk to. They have a different approach. And it just leads you to having a rapport with them that's maybe a little different, because, you know, the questions that you started with or about the history and the thing, and I get asked that and I get into that, but, you know, there's more of an interest in the culture of not just tobacco making, but the history of the brand and the thing. Where here it's like skulls on boxes and this and that, and then, you know, we've got ridiculous sizes. I don't get. Thank God that's going away. So I enjoy both. You can be a little bit more silly here in America. Maybe some people connect with it, and I'm not less silly, as you see when I go on Europe or talk to my retailers there. They're probably used to it by now, but you know, I enjoy both. But I got to say, I really enjoy the European market, and I really, really want to go over there and have some fun and bring some of the American P.T. Barnum style marketing that we do. I had an idea to do a No Sleep to Berlin tour. I was going to get like a Porsche 911, wrap it up, you know, with the lion, which is our logo, and just go driving from like Amsterdam to Berlin, and distributor there said, but that's only like a 8-10 hour drive or something. Not even. So I don't know. I'm like 8-10 hour. That's just to go get the mail here in Texas. That's the driveway is 8 or 10 hours. So, but I'd love to one day do like a tour of Europe, have some fun. Like I was watching Ewan McGregor on his motorcycle. He's done it across the world and do all that and do Europe and just have this ridiculous line on a Porsche 911. I love Porsches, and just go to these, show up and do events, and bring a little American style. Maybe it'll be a lion on one and a big American eagle on the other one. So freedom on it, for all you guys love that. And kind of, that's to me one thing I enjoy about the American market. It's kind of fun in that respect. And in Europe, it seems a little bit more, subdued. So maybe I bring the disaster of a Cuban American style to Europe and have some fun. But don't get it wrong. Those damn Europeans, they like to have a good time and drive crazy cars too.
Look, I believe there's plenty to learn from everybody, right? And as long as we have different stories to tell, different characters and different things to explore, that's wonderful. And it makes it all the more worthwhile and exciting.
Listen, you're in Geneva, which has great coffee. Okay. I'm in North Texas. These people have rows and rows of American coffee. It's horrific. And I love America. Don't get me wrong. But Cuban coffee, espresso, Italian coffee, my God, it's so hard to find here. I drove hours the other day because there was a Spanish firm. I was surprised that had jamon serrano, which is our version of prosciutto, if you will, which I loved. And finding this stuff, I mean, I love, look, barbecue. I ain't going to Austria to eat Texas barbecue, okay? Tex-Mex, I get it. But in today's world, in such a big country, cosmopolitan area, you think there'd be like a little bit more variety. We have some great wine selections and things like that. But, I love things that are authentic. The other day I was driving here, and there was a lot of Vietnamese refugees after the war that settled in this North Texas area. And I started driving Pho Hum Young and Pho. I was what? What is this? What is this? And I hit the mother lode the other day because I discovered they're probably like, oh no, Padilla has discovered our neighborhood. And it was all like Vietnamese markets and restaurants. And I go, man, I'm going to eat some good Vietnamese food there. So you got to find them. They're out there. But here in America, we Disneyland things too much. We turn things into, and it's great. I love, again, it's a great place, great country, great people. Someone said from Vietnam originally. Great. I love me some pho. Oof. I have had the best pho in even in compared to New York here in Texas. Can't believe it, because that's what happens in America. You get these immigrant groups that are running. We all came here running. We all came from Europe running. We all came from Asia running, South America. Everybody came here running. No matter what they want to say, and you're watching in the media over there, we are a beautiful disaster, and it works. And, we got tremendous, but you got to find these ethnic places. Later on, they get a little Disney. Like there was an Indian place in Miami I would go to, and I loved it. Bombay Darbar, I would go there with Jonathan Drew, and the food was great. And I said, how authentic is the Indian food? And because I knew him after a while, he said, no, this is for America. I go, what? He goes, yeah, the Indian food not like more spicy, and we do, we have to put more cream and stuff for American market. So I like authenticity. I like making cigars which have a certain thing. Today, they seem to have lost their way sometimes in some of these cigars, which are unbalanced, harsh, pepper thing. And it's like, I believe in cigars that are rich, complex, and have this classic Cuban style, which today is hard to find.
Speaking of that, how would you say that your cigars ultimately reflect your own personality, and probably that of your father as well, because the entire brand also tells the story of your father and then your own story?
I think it's a very democratic brand, or I don't know if that's the right word, meaning in marketing wise, people would say, well, don't put your name on a cigar that costs this much, just put it for this or whatever. And I'm like, no, we're gonna we're gonna put the name, and I think people know that if you're smoking a $1.50 Padilla short filler used with the trimmings of the premium stuff, it's gonna be a good cigar. It sells quite a bit. You can see the reviews on there. And then if you're smoking in Miami, your expectations have to be higher. The standards have to be higher. Things have to be higher. And if I'm asking for this much of your money, you know, that's where it is. That's why we've gotten the ratings we've gotten from different places. I mean, they're probably cigar aficionados probably hates giving me good ratings. They're like, this is freaking nut, you know? It's not because it's me. It's the people I've been fortunate to work with, and me pushing, always curious to see who's doing this. There's very few times I even get to go down there, and there's like, have you worked with this guy? How do you know that guy? And I've turned people who like work for big corporations, that's their job, to look for these factories, and they're like, what the hell? But sometimes when you're connected culturally with things, this guy that knows that guy is related to this guy that brought you this. I mean, but I think the brand is about the classic cigar experience, and that's a big. What the hell does that mean? Classic cigar experience. What is a classic cigar? I think if Ferdinand Porsche were alive today, he would be very happy with where the product is. And you're like, what are you talking about Porsches for if you're talking about cigars now? You got me all twisted. What I mean by that is the 911 sits here. The form is so classic that what more? It's a rear engine vehicle. At one point it was air cooled, then they did water cooled. But the guts of that product, that machine, which I think most people won't relate it to cigars, but it's a fine machine, just like a cigar is also produced, manufactured. It's core values, and now they've introduced this 992, and people are like, oh no, it's bigger, it's wider, it's this, and oh my god, it'd never be the same. They said that about the water cooled when it changed, when it air cooled and this and that. Oh my god, and they're going electric. But at the end of the day, or when they did an SUV, but at the end of the day, the spirit of the brand, which is a racing brand, it was a brand that people were like, what is this little Porsche here? What is this little thing? And it would come in and it just dominated because it was completely the opposite. What I spoke about being counterintuitive, where they were coming into the corners a lot faster, and coming out of the corners are these front wheel drive, huge machines. And you really had to be an excellent driver to drive them. And when I even drive mine and it kicks out a little, I was like, what are you doing, playing around? No, but every once in a while, it lets you know that the spirit of what that machine came from, racing and engineering, is still there. And I like the fact that it's a product that, yes, now it's considered a luxury product maybe and things like that, but it's not about that per se. It's about people who enjoy driving its purest form and things like that. And today I went with it. I have a big German SUV, and I have this Porsche. I went to the supermarket, and the front, enough space to put groceries. It's amazing. And it's got seats in the back. I've thrown German Shepherds. I've done all that. It's in a way, to me, I would love to have a brand that represents that. It's got its pedigree there. It's a practical machine, believe it or not. And it's a lot of fun, and it's respected, and it holds its value, and it's well made, and it continues to be so. So if you're listening, Porsche in Stuttgart, I'll take one. I just gave you some damn free publicity over there. So, well, I love Ferraris. They're a beautiful machine, but they're kind of arrogant in a certain way, They have this thing, and I have a lot of Italian friends, and they're beautiful, and they're very expensive, and nobody ever wants to drive them. Oh, it's my Ferrari. Where a Porsche is like meant to be, drive that son of a gun. And that's what I smoke my cigars in it. They're like, oh, the value will go down. I don't care. I'm never selling that thing. I'm enjoying it. It gives me great pleasure.
Ernesto, it's the very same with cigars. They're not meant to be stored in your humidor
and
collected and kept there for ages.
I'm the worst, because I wish I could keep batches, to see if there's a transition. But of my old stuff, people have sent it to me, and it's been very expensive and all this. And I wish I would have kept them, but I can't. I'm like I'm like a fat kid around cake. I just can't resist. I just, I'm like, give me that. So
Ernesto, 2020 has been an interesting year. Let's put it that way.
you think?
And we just kicked off 2021. What's your New Year's resolution for the year, both personally and professionally? I know you've got a lot installed and a lot coming for Padilla Cigars, but also for you personally, what's going to happen?
Drink more Spanish wine. We'll start there. Well, when the pandemic started rolling out, I go, okay, we're going to see what's next, because our brand survived the Great Recession. What else has survived? So many bumps in the road, changing manufacturers at a certain point, doing things like this. I don't think even people know how many cigars we actually even do sell or are out there, even as known. I'm reminded of it sometimes too, even though it's still a small brand. It's still amazing to see it, around the world. To appreciate, as corny as that is, to appreciate what I have. Obviously appreciate health, appreciate family, and appreciate the small little tiny business that I have, that some people will want to listen to me talking silliness on a phone. That's amazing. I look forward to going back out there, which I haven't done too much of, but meeting cigar smokers. I enjoy cigar smokers. The part about dealing with brick and mortar, I've met nice people. Mark Bender's a nice guy over there in Germany with his nice bald head and very large operation. But a lot of these people I've met, we're getting ready to ship to Israel. He reached out to me, beautiful place there. I'd like to go out there and visit these places, and because the amazing thing about cigars is the amount of people that I've met. I'm talking celebrities. They're kind of really boring, and sports celebrities and all that junk. I'm referring to people like yourself, people who operate these businesses and share the same passion, all over the world. Curious about the culture where, I've made a living, been fortunate to make a living, feed myself a little bit. I think we all can come out of this appreciating, the difficult times. But at the end of the day, even though we've lost a lot of people, can you imagine what it must have been like in World War II in Europe? Can you imagine what those people went through? You imagine being Winston Churchill and you got nut over there who just took over France in 5 seconds, and your army almost just got wiped out on the beaches of Dunkirk, which is a great movie. Check it out. Not trying to downplay this, because we lost some good people, but that's why I named my cigar the Finest Hour in his honor. And where is the box? Where the hell's the box? It has a quote from Winston Churchill. Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It's basically the spirit to carry on that matters, and that's what what matters is that human spirit, which we're not the greatest of creatures that has been produced by DNA, but we try. And I mean, there's a lot of people who, just trying to make a living and survive and do those things in this industry and everywhere. And, everyone has their challenges during this time. And it's a very challenging time to run a business. These retailers here in America has had challenging times, and they've done a great job of keeping themselves. Online has picked up, the business has changed. I think the heart of the industry will always be brick and mortar in a certain way, being able to walk into a cigar store, touch the cigars, communicate with someone. But the great thing about the pandemic is this: we probably would not have done as much as this. And people had the time to actually connect with people like myself, and then hear from the gentleman in Monaco, because they're in an event, you're in a hurry, you're this, oh, what's the deal? The rep has a purpose. He wants to sell cigars. The store owner wants to sell cigars. And you're curious to talk to people who just got back from the war here, who have tried your cigars and and had a moment of respite because they enjoyed your cigar. things like that, what they're doing, and curious to learn about your brand and realize that you've created a product that people have actually taken pleasure in. Like that people are really connected with this, and that's pretty. That's amazing. If I made screws or something, probably wouldn't be the same. But I think the pandemic, in a way, has brought us closer. And technology has allowed that to happen. For once, technology, I think, is, with all you hear about social media or whatever, has allowed a lot of consumers to connect to brands and to hear from people like me, which before it wasn't, oh, he was not in Monaco, he was on vacation. We should all vacation in Monaco. So, I mean, I don't know if that answers the question.
It's certainly true, and I mean, there's a lot to look forward to in this coming year, 2021, and
it's going to be good. We're all going to be running to jump on an airplane whenever it happens. It's going to be busy. It's going to be, and everyone's going to remember it. And I will exaggerate it to my daughter. I was like, "We're back in 2020. I had to freaking." Walk with the dogs through 30 feet of snow with a mask to get to the mailbox. And then, I had to spend 8 hours disinfecting your food. And, everybody does that. My wife's from Finland, which has a tremendous history there. As a matter of fact, did I mention to you this gentleman called Carl Gustav Mannerheim?
Oh, you did. When we spoke a couple of days ago, you sent me the whole freaking story. It's hilarious.
That's the thing about cigars is that you discover these people. I didn't know that. I was born December 6th, and that's Finland's Independence Day. This is a weird Northern European Nordic country, which my wife explained to me the difference between Scandinavian and Nordic. God forbid. I thought it was cool because I was like, oh, she's like a Viking, which, no, we were fur traders. We're not. And then I learned quite a bit there. But then I discovered this guy who is their national hero, called Carl Gustav Mannerheim. What a great name. So it should be a DJ name or something. St. Nicholas Day. And briefly, this was like an adventure. This was an old Persian soldier. He was actually from a Swedish-Finnish family. Part of Finland still speaks Finnish, and it was controlled by Sweden for hundreds of years. And then the Russians, for a time, let them do their thing. And then in 1939 or 40, the Russians, Stalin was like, you know what, little Finland? I want to take over about this chunk of your land. And of course, the Finns, who are a tiny little country, no air force or whatever, said no. And they're not people of a lot of words. They just said no. And then they fought him. And they fought 10 Russian divisions, 500,000 people coming over your country, and you on little skis. You imagine that, Reinhard? Freaking bunch of Russians coming at you. And they have this thing called sisu, this word called sisu in Finland. And it's basically means like perseverance against all odds. And I mean, these people got to be crazy. It's like out of all the places you migrate to, you're like, oh, this is fantastic. Let's just stay in Finland. This is, now I'm going to get all kinds of hate mail about Finland. I think it's great. It's got a great story. But this Carl Gustav Mannerheim that was trained by the czars in their military school, and kind of aristocratic from that time, turn of the century guy, older guy. They had a civil war where they fought the communists in Finland, fought them out, and then the beginning of World War II starts, and the Russians were feeling that the Germans are going to use Finland to invade, which later they did. And one of the reasons that Hitler got cocky and thought, well, if the Finns can kick the Russians' ass, let's give it a go. But they didn't know that the Finns were, these people were hunters out in the woods on skis and tough people. And the biggest sniper in the history was the White Death out of there. But Carl Gustav Mannerheim traveled throughout the world with a cigar before the war, was recruited and asked to go back. And I learned about him. Now, you say, was Finland in line with the Germans and get into that history? But it's a great story. He hated Hitler. That's a fact. Because Hitler was a little schmuck, a poser. Wannabe soldier, he's in World War I, a frustrated artist, the whole whatever. But he really wanted to get Finland on its side, and so he went to his birthday, and then this private rail car, Hitler hated cigars. That right there says enough. Right there you go. Never trust people that hate cigars. And Carl Gustav Mannerheim lit up a cigar in front of him. And of course, you know, the people were like freaked out and the whole thing. And at that point, he knew that he needed to use them to push back some of that Russian invasion, but he knew that he had the upper hand and the whole thing. But there's fascinating anecdotes through the history of cigars and where they played a role that I hope more people speak of. It's just an interesting, curious thing, and the role cigars have played throughout history. It's been a big one. So that's my Carl Gustav Mannerheim story. You know, I was going to say.
It's absolutely fascinating to listen to you and to listen to
Not really
all those stories. Thank you for sharing all that with us, and it's incredible. Time flies. So we're 90 minutes into our show.
Oh my Lord. Did they fall asleep? Let me see. All the Europeans. How many we got? We got like 2 Europeans. There's a husky watching us from Norway somewhere. A poodle in France. We've been left to people's dogs just looking at us over there. There's a guy with a nice green scarf going on with a yellow jacket right there.
And you do not even see all the people who are watching on Facebook.
The guy in the dark. He's with the Special Air Service back there. I don't know what's going on. This guy looks very. Oh, sorry. Oh, over here, I like this guy with just the door and nobody's left. And then there's this guy. It looks like he's with the Russian mob. Steve Davies. He's over there with the red light. Over here, he's like, no way. And then we got Edison Nieves. Welcome back, Edison. Good to see you. Lost him again. Philip P is very serious. He used to be with the Royal Commandos back in the day. Seen a lot of fighting back in his time. He's done with that. Now he just watches Manchester. What else we got? Oh, look, Charlie Lax. He's like, he doesn't even move. Ian Narbeth. We know who to go visit in Monaco. We got James over there in the dark. He used to play rugby. Looks like it. Oh, there he is. Charlie Lax is back. He's alive. We got James May over there. Rainer Jalnek is over there. Taki Hoon is. I'm just curious, scrolling through all things. They don't see any more pictures. But anyway, I really appreciate everyone being on here and listening to talk.
Ernesto, I believe you just muted yourself. On purpose or accidentally, I don't know.
Oh, sorry. Did you hear me?
Yes.
I was scrolling, looking at all the participants.
It's a challenging world out there with all the
yeah. So how long have you been smoking cigars there, Reinhardt?
I smoked my first cigar when I turned 18. So that was
you rebel.
A solid 14 years ago.
Wow.
That was certainly an interesting story.
Yeah.
But it's been almost 9 months now that we're doing Light 'Em Up, and it's been a
congrats, great show,
pleasure, and what a story. As I said, 2020 was certainly an interesting year, and I can't wait to kick off 2021 properly. Actually, we have already did, but there's plenty to come, and you've probably seen the official launch of Cigar Rides of the World. That's Jeremiah Miraful, who actually says hello to you and sends his regards.
Thank you.
On Sunday.
You know what? I got a story about that guy. Not him, his father. I forgot about that. I got to meet him. Passed away. But I remember meeting him at Perdomo Cigars just when I got on the business. And Nick knew that I love cigars. He says, look, this is the guy who grows all the Cameroon wrapper. And that guy had some stories, an amazing story of going down to Africa and the whole process of what it took. Very, very fascinating. A tremendous, I don't know how many hundreds of years that family's been in the business, but told me so many stories about Cameroon growing in Africa. It's really fascinating. And, so those are the cool people I've gotten to meet. Those are the real people. Those are the real, so.
It's such an interesting industry, and it's all about the people. And I'm glad that through Light 'Em Up, we get to connect people from all around the world and build bridges and share super interesting conversations with amazing characters like yourself, Ernesto.
So, indeed.
And before we wrap things off, I have two more little comments. Well, first of all, a little glimpse ahead. Next week, we're going to have Ristay from Jessum Kral joining us. So that's going to be a very interesting
Oh.
session as well. And Ernesto, I have a final question for you, sort of going back full circle to where we started, because we spoke about your father writing about the audacious roses. And then in 1984, after all the struggles and the troubles and finally settled in the US, your father wrote, "Heroes graze in my garden." So when you look at your own journey, where do you see yourself headed? And what might be the title of the poem or the book that you're going to write for the future of Ernesto Padilla?
I'm definitely not a writer. That's for sure. Actually, you know, if anything, I've learned to do the right thing no matter the price. Because a lot of people think when you do the right thing, in this particular case, that it's necessarily going to be all rosy and perfect. I think at the end of the day, you know, hopefully they look back and say, well, that guy was a carrier, is this and that, but he was true. True to his industry, to the product, wanted to let people know about the great history and culture of cigars. And you know, I probably, one thing I enjoy the most is meeting consumers, all kinds. You know, running into them. It's a huge liquor store chain here in Texas, the largest, 160 stores. And I just happened to pop in there and I see a guy grab this. Hey, how you doing? And you make an instant connection with that person. And he didn't know who I was. I wasn't, you know, whatever. I'm curious to see. And it's a interesting kind of small brotherhood, if you will, across the world. And you get to, you know, whatever, you know, I'm not saying you have to smoke a certain cigar if you like this or that, whatever, but, you know, explore, try different cigars. Don't be afraid to them, different brands. I do. I smoke them all the time. I smoke them on my Instagram and all that. The title of my book, The Last Lion by William Manchester. That was actually about Churchill, but I thought it sounded good. No, but I hope that there's more people that come into the business that don't need to add another lifestyle to it. There's already so much to the history of the industry. Just make consistent great cigars, tell their story. We don't need, you know, to Hollywood it up and do all this. It's fine. Some people might be attracted to it, but stay authentic to yourself and the product is what I'd say.
That's a brilliant final statement, and what better way to end a great conversation. Ernesto Padilla, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Here tonight, today, this morning, this afternoon, wherever you are around the world. All the very best to you. We wish you an amazing, healthy, happy, and successful 2021. And hopefully we can share a cigar super soon again.
Yeah, I'll see you in Europe soon. Be
All
well.
the very best.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Thank you for joining.